Welcome to the Side Hustle to Small Business podcast powered by Hiscox. I'm your host, Sanjay Parekh. Throughout my career, I've had side hustles, some of which have turned into real businesses. But first and foremost, I'm a serial technology entrepreneur. In the creator space, we hear plenty of advice on how to hustle harder and why you can sleep when you're dead. On this show, we ask new questions in hopes of getting new answers. Questions like, how can small businesses work smarter? How do you achieve balance between work and family? How can we redefine success in our businesses so that we don't burn out after year 3? Every week, I sit down with business founders at various stages of their side hustle to small business journey. These entrepreneurs are pushing the envelope while keeping their values. Keep listening for conversation, context, and camaraderie. Today's guest is Candess Correll, a licensed residential sales realtor in the Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia areas. Before going into real estate, Candess was an NFL cheerleader and software engineer. Candess, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share my story.
So I think you are very likely, I think most definitely, the first ever former NFL cheerleader that we've ever had on this show. And I think that just goes to show you that people have so many different interesting career paths that get them to where they are. And so speaking of that, why don't you give us a couple of minutes about your background and what got you to where you are today?
Totally. I started my professional career actually as a software engineer. I went to the University of Maryland and studied computer science. While I was getting my degree, I was actually on the Maryland dance team where I cheered for all of the home football and basketball games for 4 years. After I graduated and got my degree, I was offered a good amount of offers before I graduated, but ended up working almost immediately full-time at Booz Allen Hamilton. And at the same time, I also auditioned to become a then Washington Redskins cheerleader and made the team on my first try. So within 2 months, I went from being a college student and a peppy UMD dancer to now being a working, living, breathing software engineer and NFL cheerleader at the same time. It was a big transition. I worked as a software developer for about 8 years, working my way up to lead technologist. Did the same thing in the NFL cheerleading background. I cheered for the Redskins for 5 seasons. I was able to be a captain for 2 of them, be a back swimsuit cover model, and I had the highest honor of being recognized by the NFL in 2019 as being the sole representative from the Redskins for the Pro Bowl games.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so I got to ask you about that, and then we'll dig into some of the other stuff. But how do you balance being a cheerleader and being a software engineer? Because, like, the games are all over the place. You're traveling for the games, and then you got to show up for work, too. Like, how did you manage that? Did work... Obviously, work knew that you were a cheerleader. Yes. Like, how did you manage that balance?
Yeah. I was extremely transparent with everyone in my life before I even made the choice to audition for the team, because I knew, even though it was considered a part-time job, it was just as much of a full-time commitment as my software engineering job. And this was pre-COVID, so we did not have remote work. So just to give you a full day in the life of Candess back then, I live in Southern Maryland now. I would drive my little Camry to Herndon, Virginia, do my 8 to 4, and I did have an adjusted schedule with permission because they knew that I was a cheerleader. I would then drive down to Landover, Maryland, and start rehearsals from 6. They ended around 11 p.m.
Wow.
Then I would go home and do that over again 5 times a week for 5 years straight. And I was only able to keep my sanity because of my support system.
Yeah.
I had a great amount of people that were able to pick me up some lunch or some dinner and meet me for practice so that I don't have to go out of my way or take that extra step. Sometimes if my rehearsals went a little bit longer, I actually live in the same neighborhood that I grew up in, so my mom was able to come in and walk my dog. I absolutely had so many resources at my disposal, so I'm so thankful that I had people that believed in me and my dreams and supported me, because I definitely needed it. I wouldn't have done it otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, this is the quintessential, like, side hustle type of thing. Because man, that is a lot of time. So how did that work when you had to go to games?
Yeah.
Because I mean, local games, okay, I get it. You can figure that out, right? But when you had to travel, it's not like it's just a one day thing, it's multiple days. So how did you manage that with work then?
Yeah, fortunately, NFL cheerleaders actually only cheer at home games. So if you go to a
Oh,
game, the away team doesn't, usually, not always, but of course for the Super Bowl, we're going to see both teams on the sideline.
right.
But typically the home team has their cheerleaders. And the good thing about the NFL is that it's a little bit more predictive than the NBA. Game days are Sundays, maybe Thursdays, maybe a Friday. But
Right.
it's good because obviously I'm not working on Sundays. Now, Monday, I stroll into that office. Completely. I remember feeling like I got hit by a bus, but I
Right.
kind of used my pseudo celebrity fame because I would come into the office on Monday and my coworkers would be like, I saw you on TV yesterday. And I'm like, I look nothing like how I looked like on TV the day before. And I was just like, yes, that's why I'm a little late. That's why I have bags under my eyes. Please don't let it be a Sunday night football game.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I have to call my boss and be like, can I please be remote today? And usually it worked because she was a Washington fan and
There you
saw that
go.
I wasn't, you know what I mean? I was a little busy last night.
You saw me, right? I was there. And,
Yeah,
and this is one of those gigs where it's like everybody can check up on you because they'll all see you on TV. Like, Candess, you were not cheering. Where were you?
yeah.
Like what's going on there?
And
So
so that's why I could never lie. Like if the games and the preseason games are typically on a Friday evening, so
uh-huh.
I would have to leave the office maybe sometimes a little earlier, let's say 2, because we typically have to get to the stadium about 4 hours before kickoff. So the preseason games is when I realized, well, not that I realized, but I saw the importance of just being honest with my employer, and
Right.
they were always very accommodating because work-life balance is very important, and also who wants to tell a Redskins cheerleader that she's not allowed to go work here? If anything, they were like, "Yes, please go."
Yeah, exactly. That would be scandalous, I think, in the local press there.
Yeah,
So I think you picked a really good side hustle
yeah,
based on where you were, and then got lucky with having a bunch of football fans where you
totally,
worked as well. So
exactly.
okay, so you're hustling and doing this. You did it for 5 years. What was kind of the motivation to be like, okay, I'm done with that part of it, and then
Yeah.
go just straight into working?
Yeah, being an NFL cheerleader is intense. It's intense on the body, it's intense on the schedule. We have very, very, very strict requirements. And despite that, even after 5 years, I felt myself asking myself what is your level of fulfillment? What is your definition of done? And after 5 years, I found myself very, very proud that I was able to accumulate many, many, many awards. I was the first NFL cheerleader to be verified on Instagram. I was one of the NFL cheerleaders that had the most amount of Twitter followers. I was voted the rookie fan favorite. I had the Pro Bowl vote. I was able to be a captain. I traveled all over the world for our swimsuit calendars and military tours. I volunteered for our youth space clinics. I've been in many, many, many publications, including Washington Post and USA Today. And I realized around 2020, when the football games went virtual at the time, that I felt accomplished. There was nothing left that I felt that I yearned to pursue, give back, or accomplish within the organization. So I found that it was time to let another young lady have her moment.
Yeah. Okay. So that point you moved into kind of full-time software development. And then at some point you decided like, hey, let's try this real estate thing. When did that happen?
Yes, yes. So as I'm sitting at home in quarantine, no longer cheering, devoting all of my time to engineering, which trust me, I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. I'm sure you did. Selling Sunset at the time was a really popular show. And my boyfriend at the time, we were hanging out on the couch and we were watching the show. And, I'm loving it. I'm eating it up. And he's there secretly eating it up too. But he says to me, he like nudges me. He's like, you can do this. He was like, you're beautiful. You're charismatic. You have a great net worth and people do what you say. People listen to you. He was like, you can do this. And I saw that commission at the bottom bar of the screen. And I was like, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. And one thing that I also missed earlier is that that same year that my life changed and I became a software developer, I became a residence cheerleader. I actually purchased the home that same year as well. I purchased my first home at 22, about 9 months after graduating, completely by myself to this day. No one has given me a dime for this property. And so all that is kind of going in my head. I like the show. I like the money. I like the outfits. I've been through this process before. I know the value of real estate. I was raised by parents who only invested in real estate and they were landlords themselves. I said, why not just go for the classes and see what it's all about? It's a good side hustle. Definitely is not a bad side hustle at all. I can do this, sell a property to my family, sell a property to my friends, have it be chill, nothing super crazy, and still keep my full-time job. So that's how my interest in just the real estate industry started. I took the classes for a month and I actually passed the exam 4 weeks later on the first try.
Yeah. So is this the first time that you've done something entrepreneurial? Like the cheerleader thing, really kind of a side hustle. You were working for somebody, but this is like your own thing. Did you do anything entrepreneurial when you were a kid or anything else like that?
This is my very first entrepreneurial venture. And in fact, I'm eating my own words because I remember many times telling myself, I will never be an entrepreneur. I will always be a corporate girly. I love the structure and the confidence of corporate. And here I am now.
And you know what? It's there is no right answer between these two things. Some people are very well suited for corporate and working for somebody. Just turn it off when you go home. Entrepreneurs were a different breed. You never turned it off almost, like it's always going. It's not for everybody. And the glitz and the glamour that everybody sees is not actually the reality of what it is. So let's talk about that. So when you were starting this, is there something that made you nervous about doing this, taking the plunge?
When I took the plunge to go full time, I was extremely nervous. I think it's no surprise that the software development industry is extremely robust and it gives a lot of opportunity, especially for people of color like me, but especially in the DMV area where government contracting, government engineering is so secure, is so in demand. And because I have a really, really, really impressive skill set, I knew that I would always have that opportunity if I chose. But the scary part about it was listening to my heart and figuring out if that's the direction I wanted to go. Is stability and finances and surety of my future and protection where I want to go? Or do I believe in myself enough, my skill set, my God, to take the leap and do what means the most to me in my heart? I feel like the hard part was choosing what's comfortable and secure and something that's uncharted territory, wavering income, wavering support. But I made the leap. I did it. I actually had told myself to have a 3 month sabbatical and give me 3 months. And if after month 3 I was broke, then I would go back on LinkedIn. As we've kind of joked before, I've not been back on LinkedIn. So it was a risk that I cried for a little bit, but I was willing to take and be a big girl.
Yeah. I want to make sure our listeners know what you're talking about. You mentioned something DMV area. What is DMV?
Yeah, the DMV area stands for DC, Maryland, and Virginia. A lot of people think it's Department of Motor Vehicles, but it is DC, Maryland, and Virginia. More so the metropolitan area, so not exactly like Richmond, Virginia.
Right.
More so like Northern Virginia.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to make sure people aren't like, man, why is she working at the DMV? That's a different DMV there. I imagine too, with the places that you're working at, you probably had to have security clearances and things like that. So that's all kind of in your pocket because even though you're not there, you still have those clearances, I'm assuming.
I still have my security clearance. So it's like, if worst comes to worst, I'll go ahead and fix up that LinkedIn profile.
And I think that's something that we hear often from entrepreneurs. And what I've also often said as an entrepreneur myself is that, look, what's the worst thing that's going to happen here? I'll go get a job, right? Like, it's not like somebody's not going to hire me. Yeah, it might take some time, but somebody eventually will. And you've seen that, I think, through your career. You've job hopped from job to job as a software engineer. How hard has it been for you kind of moving jobs? Has it been pretty straightforward?
Extremely easy. In fact, I still get job offers today. I
Do
just had
you?
yeah. I just had a company reach out maybe about 2 weeks ago asking if I still have my engineering efforts on pause. Yeah. So, and that's the thing about being in this area and having that skill set that's so in demand with a bunch of different industries.
Right.
I have never struggled with employment. In fact, I got my first offer letter when I was a junior in college. So I was
Wow.
always pretty prepared on the employment end, and which was easy for me when I was going through those fears to actually bring those fears to reality and be like, hey, you've never struggled with this and you probably never will. So
Right.
this fear is not even valid.
Right. Yeah. So let's change kind of topics a little bit and talk about then the real estate side of it. Um, I mean, there's a lot of things there. I mean, like in any job, there's a lot of things you can't control, right? Market downturns, interest rates, like all those kinds of things. How do you think about those things? Because all of those things implicitly impact your ability to do your job. How do you think about those things, and how do you prepare yourself for the things that are, it's easy to deal with the things that are going to make things easier. What about the things that make things harder?
Yeah, that really caught me up the first, I would say, year of ownership in real estate because there's so many things that I don't have control over. And there's so many things that can go wrong, especially when dealing with someone's finances, dealing with someone's address, dealing with banks, dealing with home sellers, dealing with very, very, very personal items. I realized very quickly that I have a very intimate role with people. And the biggest thing that can help not only secure my sanity and my peace of mind, but also my client's sanity and peace of mind is encouraging us to control what we can control. We cannot control the interest rates. However, we can control our budget. We can control our expectation. We can't control inventory. However, again, we can control our budget. We can control our expectations. So I like to really settle myself and my business partners and my clients by really, really, really finding creative and unique strategies to control the avenues that we have the power to do.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about how do you find those clients, right? So you're moving from software engineering, where you don't really need to talk to people about their homes and stuff, into real estate, residential real estate. How do you build that book of business? How do you get people to know about you? How do you get people to find you and call you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's the thing about life is that life kind of prepares you maybe for a venture that comes into fruition 10 years later. I found that in the beginning of my career, I was especially thankful for the platform and opportunities and skill set that NFL cheerleading provided for me. When I was an NFL cheerleader, of course, I was a public figure in a sense. You know what I mean? I was very much in front of at least 40 to 60,000 people every Sunday. My name was on this very public website. I was in the calendars that were sold out year after year. So the name Candess wasn't unfamiliar to people in this area. And I used that same platform to really kind of profit and earn their trust as not just a neighborhood celebrity, if you will, but now a neighborhood specialist. And with that, I was able to use my social media capital to really spin up some interest about my new career as a real estate agent. My first clients came from, I think my very first client was actually a college friend. So of course, just maintaining good relationships from the beginning of time. But a good amount of my clients actually came from either young ladies that cheered with me or young ladies that saw me on the field. Now, a good amount of my clients come from my social media.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Um, what's been like, so you've been doing this for a little while now at this
Mhm.
point. Is there something that stands out to you as this experience or event that was kind of to date the most rewarding thing that you've experienced so far?
I have a lot of rewarding moments. I think the biggest ones that stand out to me is when I have young women, and just to put it in context, like I said, I purchased my first home when I was 22, which was really, really young. Um, and I have a lot of women after hearing my story of going into real estate straight out of college, never renting a luxury apartment, never doing anything. And they come to me and they trust me to make the same smart financial investments really early in life. And I see these badass killer young ladies who do what they're supposed to do. They work hard, they trust someone, and then 30 to 45 days later, they are owners. They own property. I've had a young lady purchase a building, and I actually just talked to her yesterday. And now she's out. She has tenants that pay her rent every month and take care of the mortgage even over. And her property value has grown over $40,000 in just 1 year. She's about 26 years old. That's the reward for me, because yes, I get a commission. Yes, of course I get paid for my services, but not only am I putting value into neighborhoods that I literally grew up in, but I'm helping other young women make good, healthy choices that they will thank themselves, their generations will thank them for, because of the hard work that they've done very early in life.
Yeah. You've got, as I'm thinking about it, as you're talking, you've got an interesting background because you have experience and know how to write software, and you've done all that. Whereas, a lot of founders may necessarily not,
Right.
and are in industries that maybe it doesn't matter so much. But has there been opportunities where you've seen like, oh, the real estate industry stinks in this area, and I could write a piece of software that would make this better? Have you seen that for yourself?
Yeah, all the time. Now, am I going to do it? Probably no. The reality about it is that a successful real estate agent needs systems. You're
Yeah.
not going to be able to sell 30 to 50 to 80 homes a year if you're not automating things. So even something as simple as I have different software that I haven't wrote, but I've of course consulted out, to where if someone goes on my website and submits their first name, email, phone number for my newsletter, it automatically gets added to my CRM, and then I push a welcome email. Not only does that save me 20 minutes of my time, I'm ensuring that every single person that wants to get in contact with me at least has that first initial touch right after they register. It's a very small and simple example, but we need systems and technology to be able to detect that trigger and then do what we want it to do in the logic.
Yeah. Well, so I find it interesting. You say that you've seen opportunities where you could have a piece of software you wrote to make the real estate industry better, but you're like, nah, I'm not doing that. Why are those not opportunities that you want to chase as well?
I have a full breadth of the capacity of the work that it'll take, the dedication of time that it'll take. And I'm just not passionate about it right now. And that's one of the reasons why I left the software engineering industry. I'm very talented. I scored really, really well when I was in school, and I have a lot of good rapport with the employers that I worked for. So it wasn't a case of I was feeling inadequate or I felt like I wasn't qualified, but my heart wasn't there.
Yeah.
So I was like, now I'm like, get somebody else to do it. Get somebody that cares. Get somebody that cares. I don't care anymore. I don't.
I mean, and that's a good skill, right? Like
Yeah.
knowing when it's like, okay, somebody else can do this better than me, or will love it more than me.
Totally.
And by an extension of that, they're going to do a better job than you are,
Exactly.
because they are so passionate about it. So you should always focus on the thing that you're passionate about, even if you're good at some other things along the way. So,
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about, and we talked about this a little bit, but I want to talk about it in the here and now. How do you balance the stress and demands of doing these things? So already we talked about the stress and demands of being a cheerleader and a software engineer. How about now of having a business and then life and all of these other things that inevitably go up? You're still living in the same neighborhood that you grew up in. So there's a lot of people that like there's always probably things that you can go to and have fun with. But how do you balance all of these things for yourself?
I think the biggest thing is just managing expectations, managing self expectations, managing expectations of my time, and also managing expectations of my clients, which are external factors that I cannot control. So I think when I have a good foundation of this is what I expect, this is not what I expect, and why I expect these things, this timeline, this mentality, this compensation, I think it's easier to just dust things off and be aggressive in moving on to the next. One thing that I'm pretty good at is that I'm good at moving on. I'm good at moving on to the next win. I'm good at moving on and finding the next deal. So I think just handling my expectations that every single client is maybe not for me. Every single deal that we call is maybe not the perfect deal for that buyer. Every single offer that we see may not be the perfect offer for that seller for whatever their circumstances, because we all have our own life. And so really what you can control is just your expectations. And once I got to that period, I was able to be present and just show up for people however they needed me.
Yeah. Yeah. Great response to that. Okay. I got two last questions for you. If you could go back in time and do something differently, what is that and why?
Yes, I think I would have planned my exit out of corporate a little bit more strategically. If I'm
Okay.
being transparent, my exit was an emotional move. And while I would not say that it worked out in failure or resulted in failure, in fact, I think it gave me the grit of a tiger to be here in February and not be back on LinkedIn. But if I'm just being mature and looking back on the decisions that I made, I would have been more organized in how I planned that exit and had a strategy. I
Yeah.
did not have a strategy, and I don't advise that. I serve a good God and I'm protected, but I would recommend having an exit strategy for sure.
Last question for you. If somebody is thinking about taking the leap and going like you did from a side hustle to a full-time business, what advice would you give them?
Yeah. Define your why. What's your why? Why are you doing this? You need to have a very clear mission statement and defined goal, or else you're just going to be wandering. You're just going to be fumbling, and you're going to waste time, productivity, resources, maybe even your mental and financial and physical health. So if this is something, whether you want to take a leap into anything, you need to know why you're jumping. You're quite literally leaping from one mountain to another. So having your definition of why and clearly defining your goals, so that when, especially in entrepreneurship, when things get a little cloudy, get a little gray, you know exactly why you started this journey.
Yeah, love it. Candess, this has been fantastic. Where can our listeners find and connect with you online?
Yes, I am most accessible on TikTok and Instagram at Candess C. However, I do have a website. It is CandessCorrell.com. I have a free first-time homebuyers guide. I have a free seller's guide. If you ever wanted to talk to me one-on-one about your situation, you can schedule a free Zoom, 30-minute Zoom call on me on my website. Again, that's CandessCorrell.com. I'm also on LinkedIn at Candess Correll. I am on Twitter at Candess C. And I'm also on Google at Candess Correll Realtor, where I have over 25-star reviews. So please check me out if you're interested in real estate, whether you want to buy, sell, or invest, or if you want to be a real estate agent yourself. I mentor real estate agents as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Side Hustle to Small Business podcast, powered by Hiscox. To learn more about how Hiscox can help protect your small business through intelligent insurance solutions, visit hiscox.com. And to hear more side hustle to small business stories or share your own story, visit hiscox.com/side hustle to small business. I'm your host, Sanjay Parekh. You can find more about me at my website, sanjayparekh.com.